prevention. So prevention is really important to us. It's probably the best way that we have that can to stop illegal moneylenders in their tracks is to stop people requiring to go there in the first place. It's a difficult subject to engage with people, illegal money lending. It's not something, when somebody's borrowed from an illegal money lender, they don't come right out and say it. They won't just sit there and tell you. There is no silver bullet question that will get that person to admit that they've borrowed from somebody of that ilk. So we at the Scottish Illegal Money Lending Unit, and as part of our wider team at Trade Standards Scotland, place a greater emphasis on prevention because we know that that's key to our battle. So one of the things that we decided to do almost 5 years ago now was to look at prevention projects, to look at community-based projects that would go out there and work with those individuals that are most at risk of borrowing from an illegal moneylender. And to do this, we've encouraged a number of organisations over the past 4 years to come in and bid for funding. This year we were glad that we received the highest number of bids that we received for year 2020-2021. Obviously, as most people will be very aware, we ended up in a global pandemic, which completely changed our kind of plans for the projects. And I think it's a testament to the hard work of the staff that you're going to meet today that are working these projects, that they've managed to get them up and running at a time when, I'll be honest, I had my doubts whether we could ever get them up and running. And I think that the people you're going to meet today deserve the enormous amount of credit for talking about the work that they've managed to undertake this year in these testing circumstances, but also at the same time, the lessons that have been learned and how to do things probably in a different way than we probably ever would have expected when we approved these projects back in, well, what seems like an eternity ago now, but really was back in January, February of this year. So joining me at the table today is from GREC, or the Grampian Regional Equality Council, is Molly McCall. I have Lucy Dunbar from West Dunbartonshire Council and Lorna Macy from West Lothian Council. All three will give a small introduction to what their projects are about. And again, like I say, we'll have the opportunity to ask questions, but if anybody has anything that they can think of throughout this, please drop it into the chat and we'll keep monitoring that. So without any further ado, because you're not here to really listen to me, you're here to listen to what these projects I've got to say, I'll hand over to Molly McCall from GREC. Molly, are you there?
Yeah, hiya John, how you doing?
I'm very well, thanks. I'm glad to see you here, Molly.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. So I will just share my screen. Can everybody see that all right? Can everybody see the presentation here? You can. Great. Okay, so as John said, I'm here from Grampian Regional Equality Council to talk about the work that we've been doing on the Aberdeen AIM project. That's Aberdeen Against Illegal Money Lending, which aims to prevent the need for illegal money lenders amongst ethnic minority communities in Aberdeen by providing education, support and advice to communities and to individuals who might be at risk of being targeted by loan sharks. So first of all, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I call, and my background is in community-based work. I started at GREC just over a year ago in September 2019. At the time, came on to support the casework project, and which I'll talk a bit more about in a minute, and also to lead the outreach project. I still do both of those things alongside working on Aberdeen AIM. So here is an overview of what we're going to be talking about today. If I can get my slide to change, there we go. So first of all, for those of you that are not acquainted, I will tell you a little bit about GREC and the context for the project within our work. I'll show you a little timeline of the project so far and where it's going. Share some highlights from the project so far and some of the materials that have been created. Then I'll share our plans for the latter part of the project, and finally share some thoughts on prevention. So because I'm sure a lot of you are Central Belt based, I will just tell you a little bit about GREC, my organisation. We have been working to promote equality, help build positive community relations and fight prejudice and discrimination in Aberdeen and the wider Grampian region for over 35 years. When we were established way back in 1984 as a Grampian Community Relations Council, our primary aim was to address racial inequality in the area, but our remit has changed over time and has become somewhat more intersectional after the passing of the Equality Act in 2010, which, as I'm sure most of you know, aimed to streamline equalities law and provide equal protection to all different minority groups. We, at that point, became Grampian Regional Equality Council, and our services are nowadays available to anyone who has a protected characteristic under the Equality Act. Our name has changed, as you can see, over the years a few times, but our commitment to empowering the diverse communities in Grampian and to championing equality and inclusivity locally has remained. And also non-UK nationals and ethnic minorities still do make up a fairly substantial part of our client base. Like many other places, our office shut in March and unfortunately remains shut. We haven't been able to reopen yet per Scottish Government guidelines, but we are hoping to make a phased return to the office in early 2021, so keep your fingers crossed because I am definitely sick of working from home. So a little bit about the projects that we provide to the communities in Aberdeen. The casework project I mentioned already, that's another part of my role. We provide free confidential support and advice to people who have suffered inequality or discrimination. So our caseworkers can help people make sense of their rights and their options if they've, for example, been the victim of a hate crime, been discriminated against at work or in a public sphere, or even if they're isolated from the community and can't access the services that they need for a language barrier or other accessibility reason. We also run a counselling service for adults and young people. One service for adults and a separate service for children and young people, which provides free counselling to people whose emotional well-being has been impacted by inequality. We've got language support provided for all of our clients by Intrans, which is our interpreting and translation team. They have interpreters for just about every community language you can think of, so that's great when so many of our clients don't speak English as a first language, and their services are also available for business translation. Our employability workers provide one-to-one employability support for people who are looking to get into work or into education, and that includes things like CV building, cover letter advice and interview tips. And our English language and integration project also provides support for job seekers because they have short-term ESOL for work classes, which we run at both a beginner level and an intermediate level. And we also have Language Works, which is a weekly informal session where we discuss matters related to employment and working in the UK. And it's open for anyone to come along and practice their English in a conversational setting. So through our various services, we are already been working with people who might be vulnerable to loan sharks. We as an organisation, first became aware of the high levels of illegal money lending amongst communities in Aberdeen at the end of 2019, after we met with John and some of his colleagues from the Scottish Illegal Money Lending Unit. Although after finding out and speaking to various community leaders and organisations about it, no one was particularly surprised to hear that there was high levels of illegal money lending activity here, and there's a few reasons for that. Ethnic minority communities in particular can be attractive to illegal money lenders for all sorts of reasons. Often there's a language barrier which might impact their awareness of or understanding of welfare or benefits that are available, or other legitimate forms of credit, or can also lead to like a lack of understanding of your rights, your entitlements, and various legal issues. There's also taboos amongst certain groups around issues like benefits, money, and debt. And finally, a lot of migrants in the UK, despite what people who say folk come here to scrounge on benefits want you to think, majority of non-EU migrants in the UK have no recourse to public funds, which means they have no ability to claim benefits, so they're already more economically vulnerable because they don't have access to that social support safety net. Aberdeen, believe it or not, has got the most diverse population in Scotland. 19% of the population was born outside of the UK and 17% are non-UK nationals. For a few reasons, it attracts people from outside of the UK. We've got two big famous universities. Obviously, there's the oil and gas sector and all of the industry that's associated with that. That means Aberdeen's seen as a wealthy city, but it's got areas of very severe debt, as any city does. It's got areas of very severe deprivation, and the city as a whole has been hit very hard over the last few years by fluctuating oil prices and crashes, and then now, of course, the pandemic. Ethnic minority communities in Aberdeen tend to often be overrepresented in the most deprived areas. So, for example, Tillydrone, which is an area in the north of Aberdeen, a whole 1/3 of their population was born outside of the UK. So, taken all together, this means that Aberdeen's communities could be seen as quite attractive to loan sharks. We, GREC, already have strong pre-existing relationships with a lot of minority communities in Aberdeen, and good relationships with lots of formal and informal community groups. And furthermore, we, after the initial lockdown in March, we, along with probably just about every third sector organisation out there, saw a huge increase in inquiries and referrals from folk who were suffering the effects of financial exclusion, which of course makes them more vulnerable to illegal money lenders. So altogether, this means that GREC is pretty much well placed to deliver this prevention work in Aberdeen. So it was very timely when we found out that we would be receiving Scottish Illegal Money Lending Unit funding in spring to carry it out. So here's the project timeline. As you can see here, our project was launched in May. We began the first block, which was regarding training and preparation at this time. In June, we started block 2, which is really the meat of the project and is focused around client work. So that block was about outreach and income maximisation. And it mostly takes the form of one-to-one advice and support for financially excluded people, but also group training workshops for community groups. And altogether that hopes to enhance financial literacy and inclusion, which then in turn should prevent any need to rely on illegal money lenders. Now, full disclosure, as I'm sure John said earlier, we did not expect during the planning and preparation stages of this project that we would still be working remotely like all these months later. So uptake, like the project outline had to be reworked, and uptake on was initially a little bit slow, but because we had to focus our outreach activities online rather than being able to actually go and visit community groups and speak with them in their own spaces. But despite that, the first training workshop with a community group took place in August, and feedback for them has been overwhelmingly positive. I'll share some of that in a minute. So we're now just over halfway through this block 2 in December, and block 2 will continue until April 2021, where we'll begin the final stage of the project. So final evaluation, reporting and write-ups. So now I'm going to share some highlights from the first 6 months of the project. These figures here are from between May and October 2020, just because that's when I made my last report. So the numbers are a little bit higher now. But as of October, the project had engaged with 341 individuals through outreach activities. So that includes online community events and also through social media. We have provided one-to-one income maximisation support to 40 individuals, most of whom we engage with during these community workshops. But I have also taken on 14 individuals as clients for ongoing financial inclusion work. And actually it's probably closer to 20 now, because it was around 14 in October, but I've had quite a few more referrals in the last couple of months. So as I said, the feedback from the training workshops has been very positive. I won't give you all of the figures here, but for example, like 80% of respondents agreed they understood what illegal money lending is better than before, and 80% agreed they understood the dangers of illegal money lending better than before. 100% agreed they knew how to get help if they encounter illegal money lenders. And 70% agreed that their knowledge of money lending terminology was better than before. So that's all been really positive. Here's some, I mentioned that 14 individuals as of October were receiving or had received ongoing one-to-one support over a sustained period. So here's some examples of those 14. The majority have had a notable improvement in their financial situation since we started working together. And I've just included some practical examples here of ways in which people's financial situations have improved. So now I just want to share some of the materials I created for the project. This was the original promotional flyer, which was created in the summer. And we had intended to print this out and put it places, but nowhere except flyers anymore. So as I said, our outreach activities have been focused online, but that's okay. And this is a newer, that last one actually we also have in Polish, because as I have learned since I've had to focus on my outreach activities online, there's a very active Aberdonian Polish community on Facebook, so we've got this one in Polish. This one is a newer poster. I just created it last week to share, to promote the next lot of workshops, and because I knew that this period of messaging for the Scottish Illegal Money Lending Unit was coming up, it makes sense in the lead up to Christmas in January. So this is going to be promoted over that period. And hopefully this one I'll get that translated into some community languages too. There's also a short video, promotional video we created along with my colleague Stefan, but I'm not going to share that here just because I don't want to take up loads of your time. So I mentioned the training workshop for community groups. This is just some examples from the slides from that workshop here. I gave the workshop a snappy title. I called it Lending, Loan Sharks and Financial Literacy, because I love a bit of alliteration. So this is an interactive session. It includes quizzes, includes a poll, includes videos and discussion rooms. And these are our learning objectives here. So we intend to improve people's money lending vocabulary, let them know what illegal money lending and loan sharking actually is and why it's problematic, how the cycle of debt works and how to spot loan sharks, and finally how to get help. Also, you can note down in the bottom corner here is the original logo, which I have since redesigned. So what are our plans going forward? Because we've still got a good chunk of this project left. We're working on it until, well, we are deep into winter now and the festive season is fast approaching. So as we all know, that is a very expensive time of year, and come January, lots of people will be skint and will be struggling to make ends meet. So I'm planning another series of community workshops, starting in mid-January, starting on the 13th of January with a Polish language workshop. I've also got a collaborative workshop planned with the Syrian New Scot community, as I have a colleague at Greg Ross, who also is on the casework team, but he also leads our New Scots project and is currently doing active citizenship classes to Syrian New Scots. So I'll be going along there to talk about loan sharks and also more broadly financial inclusion and well-being. And I think we might be inviting along someone from one of our local credit unions to do an input at that as well. And also finally, we have started developing a training workshop for professionals, because the one that I've got just now has been for community groups, but I had some feedback that from professionals that I've met with through the course of the project that they would also appreciate a similar training workshop. So that's in development now, and hoping to be launched sometime towards the end of January, early February with Tillydrone Community Campus, the staff from Tillydrone Community Campus. So although the project is scheduled to end in May, the financial inclusion approach that we have developed during the project will not end. It's going to remain because it's interacted with and influenced already so many of our different services. I've got several clients who are now, for example, working with our employability workers, or they're going to ESOL classes, or they're going to Language Cafe for the social element. So it works well with many of our other projects, and works so well, in fact, that when I put in my end of year report for my other project, remember I mentioned outreach casework, which is my other role at GREC. In October, I submitted my end of year report to my funders, the Robertson Trust. And as their strategy for 2020 to 2030 aims to fight root causes and support victims of poverty and trauma, we agreed to formally adapt an outcome relating to financial inclusion for the outreach casework position for 2020 to 21. So even though the project maybe not be continuing in the way it is just now, it will be subsumed into my other work. And this is just the stated aim for the outreach casework project. The well-being of individuals from marginalised communities facing poverty due to financial or social exclusion is improved. So finally, thoughts on prevention, because that's why we're here today, to talk about prevention. I looked it up because I love a cliche. I love a good cliche. I looked it up, and it was apparently a Dutch philosopher from the 15th century called Desiderius Erasmus, who first said that prevention is better than cure. I guess that's the guy who the Erasmus University scheme's name is taken from. All sorts of people borrow from illegal lenders for all sorts of reasons. So as far as I'm concerned, I really don't care about the specifics of the why, because the underlying reason is always the same. The underlying thing that needs to be prevented. Loan sharks profit from vulnerability and they profit from desperation. And across the board, for different reasons, as I say, the specifics of the why really don't matter, because the core of the why is vulnerability and desperation. So the practice will continue to exist for as long as people are being made to live and be vulnerable and be desperate, i.e. the practice will continue until the need is addressed. A saying that I like, that I think is relevant here, it's used in the recovery community, is that you can't get well in the environment which made you sick. And I think we can do well to think about that when we're thinking about prevention. Unless you tackle the root causes, then it'll continue. Illegal money lending, as John said in his introduction, really benefits from being a hidden practice. Often the communities it affects are also hidden or invisible communities. And money and debt are taboo topics across, it's in so many cultures. Even here they can be taboo and they're not spoken about freely. And this taboo and this invisibility, this is what illegal moneylenders can benefit from. They can take advantage of it because it presents as a lack of awareness of rights or options. And that makes it very easy for illegal moneylenders to exploit people if they don't know their rights or their options. I'm sure that education and awareness raising is essential to prevention, and that's what we're hoping to do with our training workshops. I'm sure I don't need to tell you folks how immense and devastating a harm borrowing from illegal lenders can cause to victims. So, you know, preventing that harm before it even happens is obviously better than picking up the pieces afterwards. And I guess that was quite a whistle-stop tour. I've kind of gone through, I'm not sure how long I was speaking for there, but I hope everyone has learned a little bit today about our project in Aberdeen. And if you have any questions, I'd be really happy to take them, or maybe take them at the end. Let's see, there's some messages in the chat.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll take some questions at the end. If you've got anything pressing, just stick it in the chat just now. But I think that was brilliant, Molly. Thank you for giving us what was more than a whistle-stop tour. That was absolutely fantastic. So what we'll do is we'll move on now to Lucy Dunbar, who's from West Dunbartonshire Council. She's leading on their project we're funding this year. Lucy, are you there?
I'm indeed, John. I'm indeed. No, yeah, so I'm Lucy Dunbar, and I'm from West Dunbartonshire Council. So West Dunbartonshire Council, as you might know, is one of our smallest councils in Scotland. It's just over. It gets all the terrible coldness coming off the sea and comes up. It was a very industrialised council, and then we lost all of our shipyards, etc. And unfortunately, an awful lot of people in a generation went from it being very prosperous and a very, very hard-working authority to a lot of people were blighted by, you know, terrible job losses, etc. You know, so we've had a wee bit of a hard time of it over in West Dunbartonshire, but we're troopers and we'll get through it. So I work for community learning and development in West Dunbartonshire, and that encapsulates a whole group of services which are there to help the people. It's called Working For You. We call it with a 4 in the middle instead of the word for. So it's one of those but we essentially are employability, and we are adult learning, we give money advice, and we're all in this big bracket of working for you. So the illegal money lending project, we applied for funding because our local authority unfortunately has an awful lot of poverty. It's quite deprived in pockets. There isn't actually very many pockets which aren't deprived. And we also tend to have an awful lot of communities which are quite far out. They're very far away from Glasgow. It's, you know, it's maybe like a 1 hour bus journey or a £4.30 bus journey to get to your bank. And we've got an awful lot of very small communities which are quite inward looking, and maybe don't have access to home credit, or don't have facilities on their doorstep where they can go and ask for help. So we applied for this because I think it was a very much needed service. We've got an awful lot of people that, you know, come through our books, and they're maybe, you know, they don't have a bank account yet. They're still using their post office card. Their financial well-being is maybe something that was maybe you would have expected in the big cities to be 10 years ago. So we brought in this project, and hopefully it's going to improve the lives of an awful lot of our people. So just like Molly, one of the main aims of my project is awareness of illegal money lenders. So that is awareness with our staff, because with our staff, obviously, if we're dealing with very, very vulnerable people, there will be people that will come through our services who are people who use illegal money lending. But you know, we've never ever asked. I asked my colleagues, and folk were like, "Nope, I've never asked if anybody's, you know, an illegal money lender." What people tend to say is, "Oh," people are like, "Oh no, we've got them," but you know what? They told me it was a friend they were lending back to. You know, so you might have people do an expenditure report and they've got £300 missing, and then they get out of them that it's a friend they've borrowed from. But you're like, well, what friend, when you can't pay your rent, you've got 4 children, is trying to get £300 out of you? And I said to them, well, have you ever asked, you know, do you ever ask, like, what type of friend is this? And they're like, no. So I think there's so much work we need to do with our fellow colleagues, and I think we can all do to ask that question. Would you say to this person, is this an illegal money lender? And of course, a lot of people say, no, I wouldn't say that because I don't want to leave my work and get beaten up. But, you know, I think that's like such a misconception that there's going to be somebody waiting for you out, you know, at the back door of your work that's going to beat you up. You know, in the same way that you would ask somebody if they've been a victim of a violent crime or they're maybe in fear of something else, we should be very comfortable asking people, you know, is this an illegal money lender? And we should feel safe that the process will keep us safe. Reporting to trading standards, a lot of people don't know like how confidential that is. And as well, an awful lot of people don't know that the people who borrow from an illegal money lender aren't actually committing a crime. And I think if a lot of people said that to their clients, you know, you can tell me this and nobody's going to be coming to put you in the jail. A lot of people might be more willing to try and tease that out of their clients so that they can support them. It's not about us getting statistics and saying, oh, 400 people were victims. It's about us helping folk. So that is a big thing for us. Something that I'm trying to do as well is I'm trying to make it easier for people to connect with the council and services. So as we all know, you know, if you need to phone up about your council tax, you need to phone up about anything, you usually need to go through a switchboard and get through to somebody. And if you've got a money worry or you've got a wee question, that could be very intimidating for people who have maybe got anxiety problems or they're already quite fearful of authority. So I'm trying to get set up a text-in service that people can just text in for any small money problem, even if that's, look, I've got a form, I don't know how to fill it in, or, do you know, I don't know what my NI number is and it's preventing me from applying for this benefit. Instead of having to go phone the DWP and go through a switchboard or phone the council switchboard, you can just text in and I will answer that, or somebody in my team will answer it and filter it through to the right person. So it doesn't need to be an illegal money lending question. It could be somebody asking for debt. It could be somebody who's wanting a bit of help because they're in universal credit and they don't know what else they're entitled to, or welfare advice. So it's just about making it a bit easier. And also as well, an awful lot of people's backs are right put up with the council. You know, they might have went to housing 10 years ago and somebody was cheeky to them, so they're not going back. So it's maybe about as well people speaking to me first, and you know, they're like, ugh, they're not too bad at that council. I'll go and get my housing benefit sorted out because I should have got it sorted out 3 years ago. And usually when somebody comes to you about one small problem, I find it opens up a whole tin of worms about other help they might need with money, you know. So it's, you know, once you speak, it might be something small, but once you get people in and you speak to them and they trust you, then, you know, you can really, really help people. So obviously as well with my job, it's with raising awareness, it's letting people know there are alternatives. So you can't say if people don't do this and you don't tell them where they can go. So it's about, you know, what's in our community, what benefits you're entitled to. So you might get your benefits paid to you through your universal credit, etc. But then there's also benefits like your social security benefits that you need to apply for online. So a lot of people just don't know what the alternatives are, and like, for example, a lot of people don't know about like the welfare fund, the social fund. So it's about letting folk know that these services exist. Even things, you know, like if you're going for a job, there, you know, there's a wee pot of money, SmartWorks, that you can get a nice for women interview clothes. There's all different grants and support that's available to you. And also I can support people with that. And just now, even through COVID, if somebody expressed that they needed support, I can physically go and meet them and help them. And we are also targeting different organisations and community groups who work with people such as like lone parents, people on low incomes, etc. And that includes, you know, social security, the DWP, and also little community groups. So I sometimes think on the ground, you know, they know their stuff. You know, so it's not just your big housing associations. It might be, you know, somebody that's doing a sterling effort up a tenement somewhere, you know, who's making soup for everybody in their local community. These are the people that I would like to target, people who maybe aren't engaging, who haven't went through the mill. They're, you know, maybe scared off, and, you know, so really getting on the ground. And with that as well, I have started this week to do outreach work. So I was physically got on my big walking shoes and I was walking about the bank asking people, well, I was asking mostly young people, you know, do you need any help? And I thought before I'd get chased. I was like, get to, but we shouldn't really say that. And I'm like, a Teams meeting, should we? Oh no, but
yes, fine.
Very, very positive people. There was people who were like, do you know, yes, I do need a bit of help. So like the young people I spoke to, like a few of them, like their EMA, £30 a week for staying at school, and it's if you're in a lower income family, they're like, do you know, that's online, but I don't have a device at home, so I've not been able to apply, and I don't want to go and ask, you know, my deputy to help me because I hate her, you know. So it's like, well, I can help you. So like, for example, I had a boy who asked me to help him for his EMA. I helped him out with it yesterday, but then he was like, do you know, see, his gran was in the background. His gran was like, can I speak to her? Can I speak to her? And then I helped gran, you know. So sometimes your best, you can put out all these leaflets, but your best word of mouth is other people. So going in the back of that as well, offering one-to-one. So people who might be, let's say they come through welfare and they're maybe not a direct welfare case, but they're, you know, they've maybe got all their benefits they're entitled to, but they're maybe needing a bit of help with making their money work for them. You know, they can come to me, or somebody who's just in a big pickle. They've maybe a big life event that's happened to them. You know, it's not just about people and financial worries. It's all sorts of things, and they can come to me. So I'm tapping into welfare. I'm even speaking to the schools, and if the schools have got anybody who's, you know, let's say they've had a big change in circumstance, a family, they can refer them to me, and I can have a wee chat with them and see how I can help them, and then I can signpost them to other services, you know. So that might be employability, that might be debt advice, that might be welfare, that might even be, you know, Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, there's a big list as long as my arm is people that I can speak to. And also on the back of that as well, I've heard from other organisations that when they refer into the council, who sometimes can provide the most help, it's sort of like you need to fill in a big online referral form, and it sort of puts folk off, because then if you're dealing with a vulnerable person, you can't say to them, do you know, Morag's going to call you, I don't know when she's going to call you, good luck with that one. So I'm trying to get set up like a warm handshake that we can get our diaries online. And so if you were, let's say you were Women's Aid and you had Mary, you would say, look Mary, Margaret's going to call you at 2 o'clock next week. And I hope that might then make engagement a bit better, the referral process engagement a bit better for people. I'm also doing financial capability classes. So I do not like the word financial capability because it makes it sound like people aren't capable, when a lot of the people that I have started to help could give me a few lessons in managing my money. But it's about me maybe helping people with let's say, comparisons for their energy. It might be like energy comparisons. It might be online banking, anything that will make them more financially resilient. And we have like input from credit unions lined up for people to come in to speak. So we only just started 2 weeks ago, but we've got 10 people a week coming into those financial classes. And that was just a very small amount of people that I targeted and asked to come. And those people were people with literacy issues who have come along for those classes. Also as well, I am going to be dealing with schools. So the schools are barring me at the moment, but I am getting packs set up to go out to teachers, so teachers can, you know, start to teach their children about money, where it comes from. You know, if you want a PlayStation, well, how many hours does your mum need to work for that PlayStation, etc. Also as well, tapping into young people who maybe don't have a bank account, or who are seen as their schools as being quite financially vulnerable. And even though a young person might not be somebody that's going to lend from an illegal money lender, they might be future people who will. So it's making them as financially resilient as possible as young adults, so they can go out and start making the best decisions for them. And also as well, working with, again, going back to working with very, very vulnerable people, working with homeless units as well. There's, for example, people who have been in prison. I was speaking to a man the other week, and he'd been in prison for 14 years, and he came out and he was like, goodness, I don't know what all this online banking stuff is. And he was so excluded because of that. So really, really what we're doing is raising awareness. We're trying to work with people to try and make them as financially resilient as possible, and working with our young people in the schools too. So we've got a fair bit on our plate at West Dunbartonshire, but we're hopefully trudging on ahead, and we'll have some very good results at the end of it.
Thank you, Lucy. That was absolutely fantastic. Thanks for that overview of all the good work you've been doing there as well in West Dunbartonshire. So lastly, we'll come to West Lothian and to Lorna Maisie, who is from West Lothian Council's debt advice from the, I can't remember, from the shop, isn't it? From the debt advice shop, even. Advice shop, that's it.
That's it, yeah.
So I'll hand over now to Lorna.
Hello, thanks, John. Right, I'm Lorna Maisie, and I work for West Lothian Council in the advice shop. I'm actually a money advisor. I'm just going to give you some background to how the advice shop works, and then go on to how we're sort of progressing with the project. We provide residents in West Lothian with benefit housing assistance and a wide variety of issues. And when I say a wide variety, I mean everything. They will come and ask about their pension, they'll come in asking about their NI number, they'll come and ask about everything. We provide a face-to-face drop-in service, or we did pre-COVID. They can call and they can email. At the moment, obviously, because of the pandemic, we're just doing telephone, emails and Zoom calls. We do have facilities for, in exceptional circumstances, to do face-to-face, but it's obviously not the main way at the moment. And they will come in and ask about all sorts of things. And from there, they we'll give them the assistance we need. They can come in because they've got a form from DWP for their universal credit, come in because they need help with a review for their personal independence payments. We'll give them assistance for that. We also do benefit health checks, and then we can go in for referrals. So when the clients actually contact us, we provide we always check for benefit entitlement to ensure they're getting the benefits they're entitled to. We're looking to increase their income where possible. We'll make referral for support to other councils or other agencies, and obviously there's things like your Scottish Welfare Fund for crisis grants, for food banks if they're in need of food parcels. So each step of the way we're looking to see where we can give assistance, where we can increase their income, which is anything to sort of get them, especially when we quite often, as Lucy sort of made a point, is quite often they don't know, they're aware that there's things out there, but they don't know how to tap into it. And sometimes you have to be really proactive and sort of highlight these things for them. We actually, the Advice Shop also have a web page, and it gives you details of assistance and the support that we provide in all the different teams that we have. There's links to the budgeting tool. We've actually got like a financial statement sort of budget until we've got a benefit checker for those who want to do it themselves, or who've got help from support workers or a family member. And also it means that if somebody say maybe is coming on to a money advice, they can actually go and do that themselves, and then that lets them see before they come into us the actual wait a minute, this is where I'm spending my money. We always discuss if there's any health issues in the household, because we're looking to see if there's going to be we can sort of maximise their income by identifying possible disability benefit entitlement, as again personal independent payment, attendance allowance and disability benefits with associated premiums. We'll help them claim for their benefits. We help them complete the form, the application packs. We will support the customers through mandatory reconsideration, appeal processes, and represent them at appeals if need be. The teams within the Advice Shop, we have a money advice team, we've got age and illness team, we've got one-to-one, which is teams set up for dealing with the really hard to engage people, the people who've got real vulnerabilities. And we'll refer on to these teams for special assistance as and when we need it. Now for our project, so the approach to the legal money lending project is we want to, as you say, we want to prevent the need to access legal lenders by providing the customers with the solutions to the financial difficulties. And it sounds really easy, doesn't it? And actually, this is the hardest thing, but we need to give them solutions. Right, we aim to do this by raising awareness and training. At the moment, we're still ongoing. We're training our frontline workers within the key services and our community planning partners, and these will become our community champions. And we also have a really easy, quick and easy referral process. We're aiming to train in the region at 100 to 120 champions, who are then going to spread that down into their team and go further down, so we can get this to spread out as bigger areas as possible. And that's what we're doing at the moment. Obviously, as things progress, we'll be picking up other things. Right, we're training them to hold sensitive conversations around money and debt with our service user, as well as know who to refer on to for the support and this is all to sort of you're vulnerable, you're hard to reach, and you're difficult to engage. The thing is that it's easy that, I mean, your support workers are helping with their shopping, they're helping with their bank accounts, but as you say, there's a stigma actually coming out and saying, right, where does your money go? You've got no money, and then where's it all going? And it's getting these conversations started, and it's giving them the tools to do this with their clients, because also you're doing this, but you need your clients to engage. The difficulty, if you come at this at the wrong angle, then they can just start shutting down on you. So it's keeping the conversation going and getting the feedback from them, because an element every time you're helping them and you're trying to break the barriers down, it's getting them to engage with you. But as I say, the training's still ongoing. We had a webinar just last month, got a really good turnout. I contacted a lot of, I've contacted people that attended the webinar, and now I'm offering them to come along to their team meetings, come along. I have told team groups, and even just attend their team meetings for just even a brief overview, and it just, in every way we can get this, we can raise the awareness. We've produced leaflets, and yes, due to the current climate, we're limited on what we can do, but we can pass them on to the CAB and our localised organisations that we work alongside. That gives the information of what we can do. It gives you the reporting. I was thinking if I've got access to bring it up on screen, maybe have a wee look at that in a minute. It's given how to report. We've actually we've been raising awareness through our Facebook posts and providing newsletter articles. Referrals coming to the advice shop in respect to the project will be getting passed for money advice. And this sort of leads me on to the money advice team. And what we actually do is so if we can get the engagement, the aim is to get the engagement. And what we can do as a money advice team is we offer free, impartial and confidential advice, and we take a holistic approach to a client situation. They've already had their benefits checked, but we will continue to check for benefits for council tax discounts and things, because obviously circumstances can change. We're dealing with somebody and they've started a job, or they've lost a job, or their hours have increased, or there's all sorts of things. Husband's left, and this can just, obviously it's a revolving door at sometimes. And we will establish a client's full level of debt. So we'll contact the agencies for a free statutory credit report, and then we'll look at their expenditure. We'll check for wage slips, we check for tax codes, we check the tariffs for their utilities, for their phones. So we're looking for ways to make savings each month. And then once we have all this information, we can then complete a financial statement. That gets verified with their bank statement, and believe it or not, even with people on low income, they can be paying for things that they're not aware of. And I'm talking about charity donations, and they're completely unaware of it. So we then, and also a lot of it is, there could be cases where we're talking about really vulnerable who have no money, but can still have budgeting issues. An element of prioritising where their money is going. They're paying a credit card but not paying their rent. And of course, that's it. They're not paying the rent. They've got the housing officer on the door. Not paying a credit card, you're going to get a letter through the door. And so you could be in a position where there could be actually stress and anxiety levels through the roof. They could be worrying about losing their home, but they're still paying a wee bit money towards the credit card. So there's also, even with doing all the other work, you always have at the end of the day, the sort of the budgeting issue that's going on. You're having to have these conversations with them. So once we've established the full level of debt, we will basically, once we've actually gone through money advice process, we can maybe help deal with legitimate debts. And it could be the fact is that we have a situation where there is money getting paid to somebody in the background, and these can't be included in a formal solution. But by dealing with legitimate debts, by dealing with the budgeting, it can then free up the money that's needed to pay for it, the rightly or wrongly, that's needed to get them out that situation. But that means that going forward, they know their solutions. Going forward, they know their friends got solutions, because if they're talking to the pal or pal's talking to them about how been the difficulties, they will actually, have you considered going to advice shop? They'll check your benefits. So basically, we're giving them the options, and we're letting them see that there are options. The referral process into the advice shop is actually really easy. They can phone, they can email. We have what we call FORT system. It's a free online referral system, and it's for partners within West Lothian. It's not just an advice shop tool. It covers the whole of West Lothian. Anything that we're doing within the project, we're actually including the Scottish Illegal Money Lending reporting details. But one thing we are aware is that they might not always be comfortable going down that route. So we're quite happy if anybody refers into it makes a report into the advice shop, that we would pass it on to relevant parties. I was going to just give you a wee couple of minutes of a case study, and this is a genuine case of mine. It just lets you see what actually happened from start to finish. She was a very, very vulnerable client. Her name's Jean, and she actually borrowed from a friend, and it shows you how the impact it had on her, all aspects of her life actually. She's a single woman, and she was in her 50s, late 50s. She has physical and mental issues, and genuinely was vulnerable. She worked part-time, so she had a low income, and she was just struggling to make ends meet. And due to this expenditure, what was happening, because due to this money that she drew this chap, what was happening is that she was often paying him and not paying her rent. Because her income, she never gave it a thought that she would be entitled to credit. And to be honest, she wouldn't have been able to even have the wherewithal, or would be intimidated to apply for credit, for legitimate credit, for legal credit, sorry. Only debt she had was to the council, and she was paying her council tax to the sheriff officer, obviously, somebody else who could be intimidating when they contacted her. So she made arrangements with them. She obviously couldn't afford to pay it, but she was struggling to get there. Because she was paying her friend, she often wouldn't pay her rent, which of course was causing a great deal of stress and anxiety. Her housing officer actually referred her to the advice shop for assistance because of the rent arrears. At the appointment, it was established that she was getting a wee bit of housing benefits, she was getting a wee bit of council tax reduction, but actually she would have been entitled to universal credit, apart from the fact she would have had to work extra hours, she would have had to make an agreement to work extra hours, and her mental health wouldn't have coped with that. So we discussed making a claim for a personal independent payment, and she actually was successful. It took a while, but she was successful, and that meant she ended up with full housing benefit and full council tax reduction. And then I completed a financial statement. This woman wasn't eating. This woman wasn't spending money on food. So I thought, what's going on here? And that's when a lot of things came out of the fact that there was money going elsewhere. She was waiting till the end of the day, and then when the food was getting marked down, because it was sell by date, that's when she was spending her money. But she was paying this money to Adamson. So again, it was also the budgeting element going on. Like, she was actually, one of her options could have been just going for bankruptcy, but she was actually adamant she did not want to do this. She wanted to make a sustainable arrangement. She wanted to pay her council tax. She had a wee bit overpayment of housing benefits, so that was getting deducted. It was okay. So we made a request for a hardship payment, and this was successful. So it reduced her rent arrears, and then applied for a charity grant. Again, that was successful, and that actually cleared the rent arrears. Council tax actually agreed to take off a couple of years of warrant costs, so that reduced her council tax by £200. And we set up an arrangement, and she was actually ended up paying less to the council tax than what she had previously been paying the sheriff officer. So actually, in effect, her income substantially increased and her outgoings reduced. Her rent arrears were completely wiped out, so that's it. She was secure in her home, and her council tax balance was reduced. She actually was £90 better off a week. That was quite incredible. Now to take that woman to get to the point of coming into the advice shop, to getting the message out and getting her into the advice shop was really quite daunting. And this is the difficulties. We can help a lot of people, but we need them to engage. Right, so now that she actually had enough money, she could pay her friend. But going forward, she knows that there's assistance available. She knows that she doesn't need to go down that route. She knows that she can pick up the phone, and she's got the confidence to do so. And also, if she's talking to people, she's then passing the message on that really pick up the phone, it's worth coming in for. And also, I think from what the research I've done, it would look like that Jean's quite a typical user of a loan shark, sort of woman, sort of living in a tight-knit community, unlikely to be probably excluded from the legal home market, credit market, and also even not wanting to go there for fear of being turned down, or even being intimidated in how we'd go about it. And also, I would imagine she'd probably find it easier to approach somebody who lives locally. She would find that within her comfort zone. And going back to the point that Lucy was making, it's something I've actually discussed with my colleagues, is that on a day-to-day basis, we'd get told people would tell us that they own money, and they could be perfectly legitimate, they own money to their friend or to a family member, but we would never have thought to question it. And that's the biggest thing that for me personally is coming out of this one is the fact is that you have to question it. And I need to get that over to the people that I'm training, that this has to be questioned, and it's getting them, it's questioned in such a way where they're not going to clam up on you, where they are going to open up. And it's going back to the fact is that there's the shame of why are they like this? It's the shame of it, or that they're frightened that we're going to just judge them. So there's a lot. So certainly going forward, for me personally, it's something that would be a lot more susceptible to open up to. The other thing that we've got a partnership which is vital to supporting those on low incomes. Is the one that was developed by the affordable credit providers within West Lothian. It's the Community Development Financial Initiative, the CDFI. The project was implemented by a consortium of Falkirk, Fife and West Lothian Council, and it's sought to meet the needs of their communities which are most at risk from high-cost illegal credit lenders and provide a wraparound service which also helps to build financial resilience. Conduit Scotland is the local CDFI provider across the 3 local authority areas. The CDFI project received a COSLA Gold Excellent Award in 2019 for a groundbreaking teamwork in this complicated field. And just to finish up, I'd like to broach the subject of reporting, or to be more accurate, of what would stop someone from reporting a illegal lender. And John, you'll have more information in this, obviously. But I would imagine there'd be an element of fearful reprisals, and it could play quite a big part in someone who would be hesitant to report an illegal lender. If they're in fear of violence, they may be concerned about having to leave their home in a hurry. And where would they go if they're on a low income? Would they even feel they had options? And obviously I've discussed it with our housing department, and there is provisions for emergency moves if need be. And certainly the benefit legislation is covering emergency situations like this. So and that's basically what I would like to say about a project at this point. It's progressing along. There's still a lot of work that we've got to do at this side. And once we get the other side of Christmas, I've got a lot of feedback from the people I've just recently contacted. So I've got quite a bit of training going forward just after Christmas. So that's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorna. And I think you make a good point here about the missing money. I noticed that's come up in the chat as well, and it's probably one of the questions we'll come on to. So if we were in a normal setting, I would ask everyone to give a round of applause to Molly, Lucy and Lorna. But unfortunately, I think if we give a virtual round of applause, I think that was really interesting and really, really well said, all 3 of you. I think you gave a great overview of what your projects are working on, and there has been already some questions as well in the chat. So I'll start off with one from Leonie Stone. This comes back to Molly's presentation, and obviously everyone does love a good Erasmus reference. I totally agree with that. But just to the 3 of you, what are your thoughts on a universal basic income as a form of prevention? I'll kick off by saying personally, I think it would make a big difference, but that's a personal opinion to me, and not necessarily the views of the Scottish Legal Money Lending Unit. But yes, I do think it would make an impact. But Molly, the question was at your presentation, so we'll start with you, Molly. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I would agree, John. I personally am also very much in favour of a universal basic income. Some people say that it's a bad idea because people are essentially lazy and will just not work and become scroungers if we introduce a UBI. I think that's nonsense. I don't think it could be further from the truth. I think if you take away the pressures that people are facing that are causing them harm and stress, then that gives people the space and opportunity to do great things and flourish. So yeah, I think not only in the prevention of illegal money lending, but in the prevention of the underlying deeply entrenched poverty, which is rampant across Scotland. It would be a great step into tackling that. Yeah, it's something I'm very in favour of.
Lucy? You're on mute, Lucy, sorry.
So, yes, Molly, you've hit the nail on the head. I couldn't put it any better. I think somebody who doesn't support a universal basic income might be somebody who's maybe not very aware of just how vulnerable some people are. And of course, you know, like anything, you know, you could say, well, some people might need a bit of help in how to manage that money, but then, you know, there's exceptions to every rule. But I think people like ourselves who work with vulnerable people could absolutely see that there's so many benefits to that, and so many benefits not only to them but to society as well. No, everything you said, Molly, I couldn't. No, completely.
Lorna, would you like to add anything?
There's not a lot I can add. I think they've both said exactly the same as what I feel. Obviously, I think it's a basic need, and I think it's a human right. I think everybody should have enough to feed themselves. They should have enough. And yes, I think we can bleep on about all, but as Lucy said, Molly said, is oh well, they're just grinders. Of course there is. There's situations and there's negatives for everything, but equally there's so much of them that is not. We're talking about a basic right. I mean, and it's a no-brainer. I mean, basically, it should have enough. I mean, everybody should. There should be, in this world, in this day and age, it's hard to believe we've still got so many people, so many children still in poverty. That the food banks. I mean, the food banks alone, that speaks volumes. I know we're in the middle of a pandemic, but even before the COVID started, there was food banks. We're still inundated, and that shouldn't be happening. And I find it flabbergasting that it still is. But yeah, so yes, I fully agree with it, and there's no point in me saying anymore because it's all been said before.
Thank you, Lorna. Thank you, all of you. Diane Dunn made a comment about working with smaller community groups. I completely agree with that. I do think it's something that we encourage, and it's something that one of the raison d'etre is behind these projects, to get out there to reach the hardest in the community, the people that don't always interact with major organisations. And I thought Lucy's point about the housing officer 10 years ago, well, I'll just say I was that cheeky housing officer 10 years ago. So yeah, I've probably offended enough people over my time working in local government we'll leave it at that. So yeah, I totally agree with that. I do think we do need to interact closer with smaller organisations at there as well. Michael asks about for any tips on missing money in budgets, and it's something that we've been pressing home upon. We conducted research a few years ago through Nick Hopkins, who I do know is on this call as well. And one of the things that we looked at in there is ways to figure out how people are borrowing, and whether or not it's linked into friends and family, whether that's where it's getting hidden away. And certainly a lot of the anecdotal feedback we've received over the last number of years is we are seeing an increase in that. But I'll hand over to probably Lorna, because you're working on the front line in debt advice, so it's maybe good to start with you on that one. Have you got any tips that you'd like to share? You're on mute, Lorna.
Sorry. So tips on how to sort of start the conversations going.
Yeah, that's sort of thing.
It's actually getting the balance. It's basically you need to get the conversation started, but you need for them not to shut down on you. And the biggest thing is showing impartiality. It's the one thing that if you can get them engaging and showing that you actually, nothing they tell you is going to shock, and nothing you tell you is you're going to pass judgment. So it's starting, especially for the likes of our social work, our support workers, they're helping them with their bank accounts, they're helping them with a wee bit of shopping. And from that you can gather that there's maybe some issues, and it's just asking. Sometimes it's just plain and simple coming out and asking the question. So where is your money going? How come you've not got any money left and it's only Thursday and you're not due to get your money again till Monday? So what's happening? Is there anything I can help you with? So it's getting the trust. I mean, sometimes as a money advisor, especially, I can do my first appointment to someone over the phone, and this was pre-COVID, over the phone, and I in that appointment have to try and gauge get as much information regarding their debts and their money, and that's the one subject nobody likes to talk about. And it's just a case of gaining their trust and gaining the fact that by sharing it with you, there is an option there. This is not just, I'm not being nosy, I'm doing it all for a reason, and with the more information you give me, then the more help that I can give you and pass on to you. So it's not an easy one to start, but as you do, it becomes easier. But the biggest one is getting impacting onto the client that there's impartiality there. You're not going to judge. That's the biggest thing they're feared of.
Perfect. Molly, would you like to add anything?
Just echo that. What Lorna was saying, that people don't want to be judged. People often, there's so much shame around being in debt, or not having money to meet your basic needs. And I try to just not. I mean, oftentimes in some of the stuff that I'm doing, it's really not important why people are, in the situations that they're in, obviously, and sometimes it is because there's things we can do to, depending on the situation, there might be more I can do to support them. But often I just want to make sure people don't feel like they're the criminal, they're the one to blame, they're the one to be shouldering the shame for what's gone wrong. So I think I tend to try and start off from that basis, with all kind of clients, making sure that they have before we even get into questioning these things, I need to make sure that they have an understanding that this is not a space where you're going to be judged for your choices or whatever.
Lucy, it was interesting you were saying earlier on about going out there and working with younger people when you were doing your work in the last few weeks. Was there anything there that came out of that you've found interesting in terms of engagement?
Well, I think with young people, young people get a bad rep. But you need to understand why people are doing what they do. So if young people are being cheeky to you, it's maybe because they're showing off in front of their friends, or whatever. And once you understand that, it's a lot easier to engage with people. I think sometimes, like if with younger people, if they are going to be a bit cheeky to in a big group, if you even give them something that they can contact you later when they're by themselves and they're not having to in front of their friends say they need a bit of help. But I think as well, like it's very good to have like a hook, it needs to be something like your EMA. People are quite happy to say, that they, for example, they want, £30 a week extra. But then and you can maybe get people in with that, and then once you've got people and you've gained a wee bit of trust, then helping seeing what else you can help with. But I think, if people feel safe with you, then you need to prove to them that you are safe. You can't break that. It's very important to follow through and not just, put on a face. Because, otherwise people will never trust you again, and it'll get out there that you or your organisation is not to be trusted.
Perfect. Thank you very much. It's an interesting one from Michael there about what is a typical scenario when someone reports an illegal loan shark. Two of my vastly more experienced colleagues are on the call and who've been doing this longer than I have, and I've been doing this for 12 years, so they're more experts in this, and they'd probably say the one thing is there is no typical scenario. I would say I've been doing this 12 years now, or over 12 years now, fast approaching year 13, which even scares me, but there is no typical scenario. But George, George Arbuckle, who's the principal investigator for the team, is on the call. So George, do you want to come?
Yeah, John, I'm happy to pick up on that. I think probably, as John says, there is absolutely no typical scenario, but one of the things that tends to be the key factor to bringing somebody forward is a crisis point. And often that crisis point is too far down the line for my comfort, because it's at the point where they're being threatened by violence. And at that point, it's beyond even the ability of our team to deal with them coherently, because what they need is a safe place to go. And at that point, it's a police issue. So we've to an extent missed the boat because they're so far in the trap. I think, as John's made a few references to the timeline on somebody becoming involved with a loan shark and actually reporting it is roughly 2 years. Now, even on quite a small loan, when the interest is roughly a quarter of the principal sum lent, that's a lot of money they're out, and it's been a hole in their domestic budget for quite a long time, which causes a whole load of knock-on effects and other things that they're not managing to afford. So it's really, for me, the key is getting in early, and it's always been a concern for us that there's no a typical scenario, but the most likely reason for somebody telling us as the formal place to report it is that they are already way beyond the point of crisis where we could have intervened and helped. And I'd like to, and it's been an aim of this project for nigh on 16 years, I'd like to create an environment where people feel comfortable coming forward with that problem at a very early stage. And it's how we as partnership organisations get to that point. But, you know, I don't have all the answers, and there is really not a single scenario that you can say, well, here's an indicator to tell you that there's maybe a problem there. It's the small questions. I think Lorna's touched on it a lot. If you ask the right questions at the start when you're engaging with them, Lucy talks about trust of the young people. In general, it's about trust. And sometimes we're not getting the intelligence in areas because it doesn't get brought to us, because clients see illegal lenders as their tool of last resort. And coming from a kind of criminal investigation background, we often make a comparison to what happens with drug dealing. Users of drugs very seldom inform on their dealers, and illegal lenders are very much the same. They are, in some communities, the only source of emergency finance, so they are almost protected within some communities in Scotland, and it's creating the environment where we can break that down is really my goal, I would say.
Thanks, George. Gives a great overview of that there. Just looking at other questions. Diane was asking about the community champions idea, Lorna. She was looking to see how do you expect to recruit, and if you could provide a bit more detail on that.
Well, actually, working in the advice shop is actually one of the advantages, because the advice shop is actually a big hub within the West Lothian. Everybody in the West Lothian knows the advice shop, and this is the go-to place. It goes to for everything, basically. The questions I've been asked is quite incredible. So it means that we have got a lot of contacts within the organisation with West Lothian. So it's tapping into them, and basically what we've been doing is they've been contacting everybody we can think of by email, highlighting the project and asking them to pass it on. So this is how we're getting the message out. So this is it. It's an encouraging them to come to us. Even if all we're doing it initially is giving them a wee 10-minute overview, and then we can, from there, once we're getting there, we can then get them to come in and start getting more and more people engaged to get the awareness raised, and also get the referrals in, because the more people we can get in, then from what George is saying, I mean, basic people are not going to report an illegal money lender. I mean, at 2 years. So if we, and it's one of these things, we can't measure a negative. So we can't measure it. If somebody comes to us and gets assistance and we can help them, well, we can't measure that they would have gone to an illegal money lender 6 months down the line. So we can't measure that. So we have to capture everybody we can. And so by getting the champions, by by all word of mouth, by getting the emails out to the people, and we're the groups that I've contacted, and they've passed on and they've passed on, and I've had a lot of feedback coming back and getting as more and more people as I can as things go forward into the new year, going out and doing a wee bit more sort of workshops, a wee bit more what's what I'm looking for, sort of interactive things. It's a case of getting them to get them engaged. It's so basic as many people as we can, because everybody we're getting down, if they've got clients of their own, then that's for everyone. We may be getting 10 or whichever it is the amount that they're dealing with. So that's basically it.
Thanks a lot on that. Neil Alexander asked a question which I know the answer to, and I'll pass it over to the person that I know can answer the question. Have any of the panel seen any evidence of illegal online lending?
Yes, so I mentioned in my presentation that I have been quite lucky to get access to a lot of online community spaces over the last 6 months. I set up a Facebook account for my work, which if anyone would like to add me, it's Molly Grech. I set that up in May and spent a bit of time researching online spaces where communities. So for example, I'm a member of about 30 groups now, and it's, for example, Polish community in Aberdeen Indians, Bengali community in Aberdeen, Latvians in Aberdeen, etc. And yeah, I have seen a few examples which I've sent through to just screenshots to John's team, because I'm not sure what else to do in that situation, of people advertising services in these groups. And it's often like they appear to quite obvious, like they seem to be sock puppet accounts, so the accounts have presumably a fake name and a fake photo, but offering, if someone posts asking about something, they'll perhaps either comment on it offering a loan, or they'll make a post in these private groups. So it's definitely something I have observed, and I'm keeping my eyes peeled for more of. I think Niall mentioned the FCA scrutiny on payday lenders, basically high cost short term, and I think it's something like 0.08% per week they can charge for interest now, which is nothing compared to what illegal lenders are charging. So I think also because of coronavirus, the traditional places where people might encounter and meet with lenders, like in pubs or bookies or wherever else, they're not open, or they're not operating, or they're operating at a very reduced capacity. So as everything else has migrated online, I guess it's only natural that money lending has to. But yeah, I think that's about it, probably.
Thanks very much for that, Molly. It's interesting, and I can link something together quite easily here, that our colleagues in the Northern Irish team have been doing some work around that as well, and they had commissioned some research a year or so ago now that looked at some issues around about Reddit and illegal money lending that's happening through Reddit, and I know that they're potentially looking at doing something similar. And I know we are lucky that we have Full Nations meeting on a monthly basis, and I do not have my colleagues from Wales, England and Northern Ireland here today, and thank you for coming along, take part today. That we are discussing these options, and that potentially it's something that we'd all join together on and see whether there's some bigger piece of research there that can be done, looking at it as a UK-wide issue, because I do know that the research there's got that. But the reason I can link it is Rosemary from the Consumer Council in Northern Ireland has got her hand up, so I'll hand over, Rosemary, to you.
Thank you, folks. Basically, it was just on the point about asking. My colleague Gillian last year actually engaged with a church-based advice agency, and we went to one office who said there was no issues with money lending in that area. We went to another one and said it was very prevalent, and what we discussed was, or found out, was the person who said it was prevalent was the person who actually literally asked if there was something missing in the budget and said, have you borrowed from an illegal lender? Now, it may not work in every case, but that particular agency has been able to look at those as priority debts. Now, the person who is actually interviewing the member of the public doesn't approach the illegal lender themselves, but they've actually said to the client, look, go back to them, explain to them that you're working along with us. And because it was church-based, in some cases, the illegal lender has actually been able to give them a settlement figure that they've been able to know, and perhaps even lower the weekly payments. So it's just something to bear in mind. I don't know whether in Scotland that would work or not, but it's just an idea that we're sort of trialing at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. Does anybody want to add anything to that from the table?
No, that was a great insight, Rosemary, because like one of the things that I know the three of us, Lorna, Molly and I, have all came across is that our colleagues don't ask the question. So it's good to hear of somebody who has asked the question and like a long-term evaluation of that. It seems to have worked very well. We can take a few lessons from Northern Ireland.
I actually did want to, and in my preparatory research for the project, I learned that the credit union movement in Northern Ireland and across Ireland is very strong, apparently much stronger and more well entrenched than here in Scotland. So I wonder if that has much of an impact on illegal lenders, or if they're still just as much of a part of Irish society as they are in Scottish.
It would be still prevalent. Sorry, I'll turn the camera back on. Yeah, it's still prevalent, because again, obviously, even with the credit unions, there has to be responsible lending, although it's obviously capped over here at 12% per year. But what they said in credit union, for example, was we asked them if somebody was a bankrupt, would they consider lending? And they said what they maybe would do is start them off with a very small amount to see how they get on. And it's really the payment history that could perhaps determine that too. So there are obviously, yes, there's loads of credit union, and it's certainly something that we would look at as an alternative. But we've also been looking at Scott Cash and Fair for You as well, to sort of see if those are options for people to consider too. But yeah, credit union is a big one over here, and we're trying to get them into schools and things like that as well.
Perfect, thanks for that, Rosemary. Alan, I don't know if you're still on. You did have your hand up. I don't know if you still want to come in. I don't know if Alan's still there.
Hi there, sorry. No, I was just when I was actually listening to what Lorna was saying, you know, and it's something that struck me. There's two things actually. Just it's maybe a wee bit conversations maybe moved on a bit, but give me a wee second to get my camera fixed. It's there's two. There we go again. Fell down. I've not even drinking either. Right. There's two things that struck me listening just maybe a wee bit earlier. The first one was, I think there's a challenge, you know, because this, you know, what we're doing just now, you know, and we've been doing that with digital signatures, you know, video links and stuff, and try to continue to communicate with clients even through this crisis. And you know, I think there's obviously a trend that more and more services will be delivered this way even after post-COVID. And I think that there was always a challenge in money advice when you were talking about building trust and you know, that sort of closeness between a client and a money advisor. You know, the money advice process sort of lent itself to that. You know, the initial money advice start bit of the process, and I just wonder, you know, how it will be, what the challenges are going to be in trying to build that trust when we're doing it over a phone, you know, or when we're doing it over, you know, through a television screen, you know, in the same sense that, you know, it's maybe not going to be as easy as maybe being able to sit down and talking to somebody face to face. So I think that's one thing I was thinking about, you know, because there is a sort of process in money advice when you do it, you know, the good money advice process about building trust with the client. That's a key part of the first step, you know, and so that they'll tell you things, disclose things, so they'll feel comfortable speaking to you. And I just wonder, you know, whether this new sort of technological revolution and the way the services are changing is going to actually sort of create barriers to that. The other thing that was actually quite interesting, I was reading an article the other day about Mike Daly had written in his column in the Evening Times, and he was actually talking about criminal law. He was talking about how, you know, some legal practitioners, lawyers in criminal law, they're really, you know, taking a mere trauma approach to how they're defending clients, and that, you know, you've maybe got a lot of people who are sort of, you know, they're sort of repeat offenders, they're committing crimes all the time. And actually, when you actually deal with these clients, these solicitors are saying, you actually find a lot of them have had quite serious trauma in their life, and that's affected them, and that's why they've sort of got into this life of pretty sort of petty, but, you know, repeated sort of criminal lifestyle. And I'm wondering, you know, how it made me think, you know, as well, what effect trauma has had in a lot of the clients that we see, you know, and that trauma could be a number of different things. It could be trauma through addiction and alcohol, but it could be trauma through things that have happened in their life, and you know, how much it has an impact in leading them to making bad decisions, but also affects their ability to even maybe manage bad situations in their decision-making process. So that was something. So they were just the thoughts I was having, you know, how that's impacting on people. The idea of what challenges this new technology is going to have on money advisors trying to build relationships, and also maybe we should be doing a bit more work into looking at how trauma has affected people and getting them into the situations that we find a lot of them in.
Some very good points there, Alan. I do agree. I think it's something we do need to look at in terms of how we take things forward. Moving forward, I think all organisations have to have a look at that in terms of, is there, and I hate using the term, a new way of working, or is it just a different way of working, or potentially a better way of working in terms of our reach and being able to get to our clients. Karen, I know you had your hand up. I don't know if you want to come in.
I suppose someone has actually said what I was going to say, which was Molly. So
perfect, thanks, Karen. Nick, you've got your hand up.
I think, in a sense, I mean, ideally, you would be able to open up a conversation with folk using illegal moneylenders. Sorry, John made a reference to the work that I'd done for him a couple of years ago, looking at the experience of people using illegal moneylenders in Scotland. But I think with the best will in the world, that's not always going to be the case. And I think, in a sense, we might, particularly in the context of having sort of online conversations with people, think sort of carefully about the information that we provide clients with, that enables them to go and do something around this themselves, rather than necessarily expecting us to be able to do too much sort of direct intervention around this. So, you know, if there's leaflets around moneylenders or written information, sharing that with folk might be helpful. And I think also just constantly being aware of the value of breathing space to folk, and breathing space through Scottish Welfare Fund grants, be that crisis grants or be that community care grants, other sort of bits of charitable grants to pay off other bills and enable people to create enough space to begin paying off money lenders themselves. I suspect that's a more likely route out of the situation than anyone trying to negotiate directly with some of the people that are lending illegally. And I think what struck me about the interviews that I did was a number of people who ultimately had found their way out of the situation and had done so, you know, themselves with great difficulty cobbling together, etc., but had managed to do so, and creating that breathing space had made it easier for them where they had managed that.
Thanks, Nick, and you make some excellent points there around about that. I think we are lucky we do the Scottish Welfare Fund in Scotland, and that is a tool against illegal moneylenders, and it's something certainly we've been actively encouraging over the last few years in terms of how we take that forward. So we are almost out of time. In fact, we've probably run a bit over, but I thought the conversation was going so well that I didn't want to stop where we were. So I've just got a few things to finish up by saying that obviously I did say at the start of this, this is part of our week of launching our Christmas messaging. So tomorrow we're delighted that we're going to be launching our first Stop Loan Sharks Charter Mark recipients. They will be getting awarded tomorrow. Watch out for that. It will be getting done online tomorrow. No giving away who our first 2 recipients are. You just have to tune in tomorrow to see who they are. And on Friday, if you're interested in more about the work that the team do on both the investigation side of things and also the prevention and support side of things, George and I took part in a podcast which is going to be published on Friday, and it will be available via our website. The details of it are www.dsscot.co.uk. That's www.dsscot.co.uk and then Scott after that .co.uk. And also you'll find Nick's research is on there as well, and there's another number of other things on there for people to help with their downloads. If anybody's wanting any further details on the work that we've got here, please just get in touch. I will put my email address into the chat. The chat will still be available after we're finished here today, so if anybody's got anything else that they can think of, please just stick it in the chat and I'll do my best to answer, or I'll go back to one of the projects and be able to provide further information as well. So I've just got a few thank yous to do before I finish up. First, I'd like to thank Sheila Campbell, who helped pull all this together and has been live tweeting away at this event. Sheila's been great. She's worked with a couple of the projects so far, and I know she's going to be doing more work for them going forward as well. And I'd like to thank Sheila for that. I'd like to thank Molly, Lucy, and Lorna for their inputs today. I think it's been absolutely fantastic. This is obviously the first time we've done this looking specifically at prevention, and I think this is something we'll be doing again. I think this format's worked really well for us, and I think that's all down to the presenters we've had here today. And lastly, but no means least, thank you all for coming along today. Like I say, if anybody's got any questions at all about things or any comments about what you've heard today, please get in touch. My email address is going into the chat right now. And if anybody, let's say, has anything they want to hear from us more, we do provide training, we do provide other things alongside the projects. Please get in touch. More than happy to discuss that. Thanks again, everyone, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year when it comes. Thank you all.
Thanks to you, John, as well. Thanks very much for having us and for all your support.
Thank you. Right.